What is going on, everybody? And welcome back to another episode of Your Request. This is the segment on my channel where I review the films that you guys request to me. And I've been having a ton of fun doing this series. And this also can cross over into another segment on my channel that I do called The Criterion Corner, which is where I pick and choose films from the Criterion Collection to watch. This movie just so happens to be physically in the Criterion Collection. And this movie was recommended to me by Samantha, who has recommended me a few films. She has really great taste. She always provides really insightful feedback about movies, and I always really look forward to movies that Samantha tells me to watch. So I really appreciate you. Thanks for always giving me great recommendations to watch. And I was really looking forward to this movie in particular because I went to film school, and throughout film school we studied a lot of Alfred Hitchcock's work, and I became obsessed with Alfred Hitchcock. And funny enough, I don't think I've ever reviewed an Alfred Hitchcock movie on my channel, which is kind of crazy considering there are a ton of his works that have really impacted me over the years. And this was one of the movies that I feel like even throughout film school, we didn't discuss hardly at all. I feel like in comparison to films like Vertigo, North by Northwest, Psycho, all of the real like pivotal staples in Hitchcock's catalog, you don't really hear Rebecca discussed in the same way. And Samantha actually recommended two Hitchcock movies. I'm going to watch the other one eventually, but I wanted to pick this one first because I find it really interesting that it's not discussed as much, which really got me excited to watch it. And I'm looking forward to telling you about Rebecca today. Rebecca is directed by Alfred Hitchcock. Story of a young woman who marries a fascinating widower only to find out that she must live in the shadow of his former wife Rebecca, who died mysteriously several years earlier. The young wife must come to grips with the terrible secret of her handsome, cold husband, Max de Winter. She must also deal with the jealous, obsessed Mrs. Danvers, the housekeeper, who will not accept her as the mistress of the house. So I was really excited to watch this movie. I'm a huge fan of Alfred Hitchcock. Truly was a genius, created some of the most memorable pieces of cinema ever made, and this movie is incredible. And I'm honestly very surprised that it's not discussed in the same vein as some of the other Hitchcock masterpieces, because that is the word I would use to describe this movie. It is a masterpiece. The one specific word I want to use to describe this movie, though, is mesmerizing. Every now and again, you will watch a movie that from the first 2 seconds of the movie, your attention is completely pulled in to where there is nothing that will keep you from watching the film. And that is Rebecca. From the very first sequence of this movie all the way until the end, which I think this is like a 2 hour and 10 minute runtime, I was never bored. I was never uninterested. I was just completely and totally enamored with everything that I was watching on screen. And there are a ton of reasons for that. And I'm really looking forward to discussing the reasons why I love this movie so much with you today. So at the beginning of the movie, we are introduced to Joan Fontaine's character, who is not given a name. We never learn what her name is through the entire 2 hour and 20 minute runtime of the movie. And she's at this like hotel resort where she's working for this woman who has a very boisterous personality. And it's really entertaining to watch their chemistry. The older woman, she's kind of mean and off-putting. And Joan Fontaine's character is working as her assistant, taking phone calls with her, scheduling meetings, and early we are introduced to Max de Winter, played by Laurence Olivier. And he sits down with them, has a very lengthy conversation, and we can tell that he is really interested in Joan Fontaine's character. And the two of them start spending time together while they're at this resort for a week, 2 weeks, however long they're there. They go on these long car rides together. And we see early on in the film when the two characters first meet, that Max is like on the edge of this cliff, and Joan's character comes up and like approaches him, and he's like broken up for a minute and walks away. So we know something is troubling him, and we learn really early on that his wife has recently passed away tragically, his wife Rebecca. And so he's kind of haunted by the whole situation, but you can tell he's trying to move forward in his life. And eventually on this trip, he decides that him and Joan Fontaine's character should be married, and he proposes to her. The two of them go back to his house, his castle mansion, which is called Manderley. And they go back together, and most of the staff, when they get back to the house, is very happy and excited and inviting, except for Mrs. Danvers, played by Judith Anderson, who has an almost unhealthy obsession with Rebecca and is constantly bringing her up. And doesn't seem to think that Joan's character can fit in the household. And the entirety of the movie is Joan Fontaine's character learning more about Rebecca, seeing the hold that Rebecca has on this household, and trying to figure out more about Max, and can he move on from that, and can their relationship actually work despite the tragic loss of his former wife. So like I said, I would consider this film a masterpiece, and there are a multitude of reasons for that. For starters, Laurence Olivier and Joan Fontaine, incredible in this movie. Whenever you're watching films from the 1940s, what I love about the performances in those films, it's so theatrical. It feels like a stage play. Everyone is really committed to their role in the most extreme way possible. And there are so many incredible dialogue moments in this between those two characters specifically that it's impossible to look away. You are just completely and totally enamored with what's going on screen. And these are obviously two legends who acted throughout their entire careers in tons of movies, and they really showcase why they are such special talents in this movie. I think the entire cast does a really nice job, but those two in particular are really what make the movie so incredibly special. It's a Hitchcock film, so the cinematography and the editing are amazing. There are some haunting shot selections in this movie where I was just completely and totally enamored with what I was seeing on screen. There's an amazing shot at the beginning of the movie where you hear Joan Fontaine's character giving this monologue, and it's a camera going up the driveway to Manderley, getting up to the mansion or the castle, whatever you want to call it. And it's an amazing scene, just the way the camera kind of glides through, and it immediately hooks you on what the story is going to be. In the cinematography, there's so many amazing moments where there's little pieces of detail introduced to you as an audience member that's just so important to get you to the finish line of the movie. And that's what I love about Hitchcock as a director. I feel like he always works so closely with his cinematographer and with the people editing the film to utilize the cinematography to reveal information to you as a viewer. And I think it's so incredibly important throughout his career. I also love the use of music in Hitchcock's movies, and this is no different. I feel like the music helps carry the story along, and it's just really such an immersive experience. And this movie, there's a ton that you can unpack about it, but what I really love is this movie is examining the control that a person can have on people's lives even after they're dead. And it's such a fascinating film. I think one of the most important choices in this movie is not giving Joan Fontaine's character a name. And what's so interesting is just because she doesn't have a name doesn't mean you can't see the power that she has as a human being. You can really see her feel very small early on in the movie, and that she is put in this situation where she's the wife of this person who has lost a wife recently, and she's trying to create her identity as his wife, but also be her own person. And it's constantly overshadowed by Rebecca. Through the entire film, we just hear Rebecca, Rebecca, she did things this way and that way. And the house was kept in a very specific way. And early on, she kind of lets that consume her. But as the film goes on, she starts to shed it. And she wants her personality and identity to thrive through that. And I think stripping her name away kind of showcases the overwhelming fight that she has to have to even get that identity to live in this place. And it's just absolutely brilliant because, when we lose a loved one, there's positives and negatives. That loved ones can die that aren't great human beings. And there's also good people that can pass. And this movie is examining a character who, from all intents and purposes, doesn't seem like she was very great while she was alive, and it can put a stranglehold on each and every person even after they're gone. I think the chokehold it holds over Joan Fontaine's character is fascinating, and just watching her overcome that, and then looking at Max's character and how we don't really know his attachment to her until the end of the film. Like, they were married, but what was their relationship dynamic? Something about it continues to plague him. And I love the way that the information is revealed to get us to the end. And then one of the most fascinating parts of the movie is Rebecca's relationship with Mrs. Danvers, because I almost saw it as you could imply that the two of them possibly had a relationship. As we learn about Rebecca through the film, it's not like she was completely and totally loyal to Max throughout their relationship. And it seems like Mrs. Danvers has this like almost obsessive quality with her, knew every bit and piece of information about about her life. And there's this really interesting scene where she shows Joan Fontaine's character Rebecca's lingerie, and it just feels like such a very like intimate moment where it's like, hey, I was this close to her, like this is the relationship we had, which made me think like maybe they were together at some point. And I thought the implication of that made the relationship dynamic so much more fascinating as I was watching the movie. And it's just such an interesting idea that losing someone, no matter whether they're good or bad, what kind of hold that has on a person. And then I love the way that Hitchcock examines Joan Fontaine's character, because you never really know where it's going to go. What I thought was really interesting is he kept choosing specifically to show that she was never eating food throughout the early parts of the film. And like a lot of times when food is shown, she refuses to eat. And I was like, well, is she going to be a ghost? Like what's going to, and that's what I love about Hitchcock is you never know with him. He was such an amazing director when it comes to pulling off twists and kind of pulling the rug out from under you. And so I love that there's all this mystery building up until the end of the film. And I was just completely and totally hooked from start to finish in this movie. And I think if any of this sounds interesting to you, if you like Hitchcock, this movie is amazing. And I see myself rewatching this a ton in the years to come. It's just absolutely amazing. So have you seen Rebecca? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Leave me a comment down below and let me know what you thought. I thought this movie was absolutely amazing and I cannot wait to watch it again. As always, if you can like the video and subscribe to the channel, helps me out a lot and lets me know the type of content you're looking for. I'm always putting out new material like this video, and this is a your request video. If you have a movie you'd like me to review, let me know down in the comments. I'm going to add it into my queue. I have an ongoing list in my phone that I do based on when you have requested it. If you've given me multiple requests, I'll pull one out and then kind of cycle you below the next person just so everyone gets a chance. But I'm going to review, if you're the first person that comments, you're going to be the first person that gets that review done. So I'm just going to go throughout that way. And I really look forward to doing more of these videos. And as always, everyone, thank you so much for watching and have a great rest of your day.